Welcome, pudding people, to another episode of Everybody Loves Pudding. I am your host with the most, Ken Seymour. Here is your other host, also with the most, somehow inevitably, Richard Geiger.
I prefer hostess with the mostest.
That also works. We are joined again by our good friend Delvin Cox from the Delvin Cox Experience. How you doing, Delvin?
I'm doing good, guys. How you guys doing?
We are fantastic.
Doing okay. Hanging in there.
Feeling good. Feeling the burn of watching a 3-hour cinematic experience twice in preparation for this episode.
Yeah, you snuck it in there a couple days.
Yeah, I did.
That's good. You watched it twice, yeah.
Yeah. So, if it was not obvious, as of now, we are going to bring you yet another movie review, this time for Avengers Endgame. Who's excited?
I'm always excited.
Okay.
Especially talk about Avengers.
Well, I was definitely excited going into the theater. Now, as always, we're going to begin with a little bit of a spoiler-free idea of how we felt about the film individually, giving a recommendation whether we think that the film should be watched in the theaters, whether you should wait till it's on a streaming service or a Blu-ray or something, or whether you should ignore it altogether. And then we will plunge into the extremely spoiler-heavy section where we will talk about anything and everything, but we will boil it down to a handful of categories that will assign points. And the points will add up to a total, potentially, of 100. It hasn't happened yet, but, theoretically, if we see the absolute perfect movie, it will get 100 points. Those categories will be cast, director, costuming and props, location, cinematography, plot and writing, and a little bonus section in case we want to cheat to get our scores to be where we really think they should be.
Who would do that?
Not I, generally, but whatever. It's all for fun, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very much so. Fun.
Well, let's start with our guest. As always, we like to get the outside opinion. You went to see the movie. What's your general impression? How do you think the movie did?
I loved it. I think it's the perfect bookend to the MCU.
Fair enough.
In short.
That's a good way to put it.
I enjoyed the movie. I went into the movie with little to no expectations, but with a lot of anticipation. And I'm looking forward to going and watching it one more time. But it was good. I think I'm less positive on it than what you guys will be, but it was good. It was a good movie.
This will be an interesting flip-flop, I think, because you're much more positive about the previous Avengers film than I was. I enjoyed it. I tried to have no expectations. I don't think it's possible going into a film that's had 10 years of build-up and 21 other titles. What is that sound? We seem to be experiencing technical difficulties of a carbonated type.
No carbonation in that one.
No carbonation. But I enjoyed it. I think it's one of those films that if you are a comic book movie buff, you have to see this in the theater. If you are a fan of movies that have a spectacle, is what they're trying to present. I'll even use an example of a movie I absolutely hated that's getting several sequels soon, and that being Avatar. The type of movie that is, because of the spectacle, you should see it in the theater generally if that's the kind of thing you want to see.
Well, we were actually at work discussing, not you and I, but some other folks, we were discussing Avatar today. Because, your disdain for the movie. But
I don't like it either, by the way.
Our discussion kind of revolved around the money, right? So we're like, well, by the end of this weekend, Avengers is going to hit the $2 billion mark. And the question became, is it going to surpass Avatar as far as earnings go? So that's kind of...
I hope so.
Me too.
I think Avatar had more back end. Like, it kept up longer than what we might see with Avengers. And people, I felt, with Avatar still went to see that one multiple times, but they did it 6 weeks after the movie had been out. And This one is extremely front-loaded with the amount of views that it has had already and will have. So that was just a discussion, like, are we going to reach Avatar money on this movie?
Maybe. Well, what this movie lacks that Avatar had is that novel approach to the CGI and that 3D, that newness that it had. But what it has that Avatar does not have is a back catalog of movies that led up to it that people have been following for so long. I think it'll have a similar feel to watching The Return of the King in Lord of the Rings. People saw that many, many times because it was the end of a journey, and that was only 3 films.
Yeah.
And this is a lot more than that.
Yeah, I think it has a good chance because of just what you said. The fact that Marvel's been around doing this for 10 years. And it's a lot of... And when we get into talking about the movie, we'll get more into that. This basically is a love letter to Marvel fans.
Yeah.
More or less so. So I can see people who've even lapsed off of the Marvel universe because they were like, okay, I like Iron Man, I like this, I like that, but I stopped watching after Ant-Man or whatnot because it was too many movies. I can honestly see them coming back just to see the finale.
Yeah.
And see what happened to their favorite character. So it has so much going forward to make it actually reach Avatar levels.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you hit it kind of on the head there. So at least 2 of us are in the theater. Are you in the theater?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like I think you should go and see this as the kind of the culmination of everything that you may or may not have seen even previous to it. And let's be honest with it, some of it has the attraction of it being the biggest movie event of this year and in some years, previous too. So like this is a big event. So I think that alone will draw people to it. If you saw Infinity Wars, you'll get pretty much all that you would need for this movie.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cool things that happened that showed previous things in previous movies, but if you never saw them, you wouldn't be too left out, I don't think.
No, not terribly so. I mean, they do good prep. But, okay, so now, before we get any further, let's put that little pin in that, and yes, we are about to head into spoiler territory. If you have not watched the movie, first of all, I don't believe that's actually happened. Anybody that's actually going to watch this or listen to this has seen the movie. But if somehow you thought you were actually watching or listening to a podcast about pudding and all of the different cooking applications of said pudding, and you haven't seen Avengers Endgame yet, you need to stop here. Go watch the movie first, or we're going to talk about every single little thing, and it will just completely ruin it for you.
Yeah. Or don't follow LaShawn McCoy on Twitter, or don't go to YouTube and just see titles of videos on YouTube. So it's hard to not.
Pieces out there right now. There's
Yeah.
a lot of think pieces out there about the movie.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll get to that. I think we're going to really dig into that. And we normally like to keep these episodes around an hour. If we run long, we run long because that movie ran long. All right, let's start with the basics. I normally like to get all of my notes about the cast of a movie ahead of time to kind of give an idea to people that are watching the film, what other projects these people have been in, get kind of a context to who the actor or the actress is. Everybody knows everyone that's been in these movies. So I don't think we necessarily need to do a kind of an actor by actor breakdown like we normally do. But let's just kind of give our thoughts on the casting as it plays. Kind of this versus Infinity War, I think, is the best couching, because this is the second time they've tried to jam-pack basically everybody into a single film. So, Delvin, how do you think they did with the casting in this film?
It worked better. It worked better than Infinity War because whereas Infinity War, they had a whole bunch of characters, they were kind of gelling together like, oh, here's Iron Man, come meet this guy real quick. Oh, get to know him. Okay, this is what's going on here. And it was cool to see those characters interact. This movie, what it had benefited it was that you have the original Avengers dealing with everything right now. So it's kind of, they already knew each other. You didn't have to get, the only person who had to go in this movie was Captain Marvel. And we got to know her last month.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. You didn't get anybody new that I can think of. We were talking like there was Ant-Man's daughter.
Correct.
since she was 5 years older than what we just recently saw her as. So that was a different actress, of course.
Yes.
But really, everybody was the same. So
there were basically people missing, but there wasn't anybody really new that was added.
Yeah, and even like you mentioned with Captain Marvel, that character. One thing with that character that I read is that she filmed she filmed her parts in this first before she actually did the movie. So you don't get that same flavor of character, I don't think, from one to the other. Although in reality, she was in this movie, but she wasn't a major player in a certain sense in this movie. She didn't have screen time that the core group had.
Yeah,
Not at all.
No. I was afraid that they would trying to get so many people into a single film that they would like jockey for position or have difficulties in overlapping or just having trouble writing it. And I was afraid they were going to have gaping holes in who they were going to include, because this is kind of the swan song. So it's important to touch on most of those characters. But really, who did they miss? I mean, Selvig wasn't in it. The assistant, Jane Foster's assistant, who I cannot remember the name. Kat Dennings' character, yeah. She wasn't in it. From the Thor side, that's really all that was missed. Other than maybe, I would have liked to have seen the Warriors 3, since they traveled back to Thor Ragnarok. There would have been a chance to accidentally run into them. I think it would have been fantastic, at the bare minimum, to have Thor run into Volstagg.
Yeah. Well,
they're similar
physiques at that point. Sorry, go ahead.
I would like to see Agent Coulson.
Oh yeah. Well,
and
a good one. Yeah. Not just that, but talking about that, Sam Jackson and there were Colby Smulders and Thunderbolt Ross were in it in one scene for like 2 seconds with no lines. It's like, oh. Well, fantastic, and these people were also here.
you got a little Aunt May in there at the end too.
Yeah, I just you can't have everything, and that while it made me sad, I understood. I mean, you have to draw the line somewhere, but yeah, I agree. I would like to have seen Phil Coulson. I don't think they missed anybody important from the Captain America side or the Iron Man side. They really didn't miss anybody else. I mean, they even hit on Ned at the end of the film. I mean, that. Yeah,
they got the bits and pieces in there.
Yeah.
I think the big one they hit on that I didn't even expect was the kid from Iron Man 3.
Yeah. Yep. That was surprising. That was really surprising. Now, did you catch the handful of cameos? I mean, obviously everybody looks for Stan Lee, and this was going to be Stan Lee's last, so everybody saw that one. And if you missed it, you were either in the bathroom or sleeping.
Yeah.
When it happened, I thought that one was a little. I love Stan Lee cameos. It didn't. It's not that it didn't feel right. I mean, but it was not great.
But did that actual sequence of events happen to him in real life? I feel like it did. I read that somewhere. Yeah.
It just looked odd to me.
It looked like it was rushed.
Yeah.
Maybe it was done during a time where he was already sick.
Yeah.
Because
it
was literally a blink and you'll miss it moment.
Yeah. But what about the did you see Russo? He was hard to miss.
I think I did see him.
In the
what scene was it? The grief counseling scene?
Exactly.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, that's what it was.
And
there was a few interesting. This movie was full of cameos and callbacks.
Yeah.
And little Easter eggs that if you were like a Marvel Comics fan, you would catch. Like one of the ones that I caught that I thought was really interesting, I thought was cool was, well, since we're talking spoilers, when they were in the elevator.
Oh yeah.
Call back to Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
Oh, that was so good.
Instead of the cool fight, Captain America just whispers to him, "Hail Hydra."
How many comic fans how's the split between that was really cool and that just reminded me of that plot line that I hated with a passion?
Yeah, that's what came up. That's what came to mind. Like, oh, that's a cool little callback to that.
Oh, there's a lot of little comics callbacks. The little quote of the Asgardians of the Galaxy at the end of it.
Yeah.
The multiple hammers from the comics. Just a lot of little things like that. But in that same counseling scene, Jim Starlin was one of the other people in the seats.
Why did you know that? That's cool.
Yeah.
He had one little line.
One little line, and I completely missed it the first time because I saw Russo. So it was like the dancing bear that they always have. You see everybody dancing, but you don't see the bear as it passes by. So I'm looking at Russo, so I completely missed Starlin. He threw me off the first time, but saw it the second time. It's like, yep, that's kind of awesome. I'm still waiting for the next Thanos specific comic book thing that he's going to do. I'm curious how he's going to end his story on that. But that's a completely different subject.
Yes.
But so what did you think about the balance? You're always going to have some people talking about the balance of male versus female, new versus old. Do you think anything was out of balance in the way they presented the characters?
Well, my hot take, I don't think the movie was out of balance. What I will say is the movie was too long.
Yeah.
They could have cut a good 45 minutes off the movie and it would have been perfect.
See, I'm in the position where I was okay with it being long. Actually, if it would have been longer, I'd been cool with that too. What you had mentioned before with the Lord of the Rings movies and how they just were just inordinately long. I actually remember back in their physical reels of movies days, I built the Return of the King movie, and it was 9 reels long. So that movie was gigantic. Actually, no, I want to say it was 10. There was one real short one. That was the 10th one. But
all the separate endings at the end of the movie.
But
Oh my God.
if there is a pace to it and there's not just nonsense in there, I think it makes sense. But I feel like if you viewed this as an homage to the 10 years, that the more of it you had to complete the cycle of all that, the better that it was.
That's true.
I think you're both right. Having seen it twice now, the first time I saw it, the 3 hours, just like that, like
Yep.
in and out. It's like, is it over already? And the second time, I felt the length of the movie a little bit more. So
First half drags.
it is definitely slow.
Wow.
It is definitely slower, which I actually kind of liked. I like movies that take their time to build up. But if you've got this giant blockbuster, I can see how that could really rub people the wrong way. I mean, you're not going to watch A River Runs Through It or Shawshank Redemption. This isn't something that needs that build up necessarily in a lot of people's minds. But I really liked it because it creates that feeling of unease, which you really should have.
Yeah. I see, like, they're trying to set up the feeling of almost despair, in a sense, like everything was lost. Poorly, they did. Now, I won't talk about that
We'll
later.
get to that. Apparently.
But you're right. It was like it was like 3 things all at once. You had the first chunk, which kind of set up the mood. The second chunk, where it was, the intermediate action sequences of what are we going to do to get to the end point. And then the last was the battle / end point, right? Mm-hmm. So it was almost like there was 3 distinct pieces to this movie.
Well, that's pretty much every Shakespearean play, and a vast majority of most of what you're going to see are going to have 3 acts to it. But yeah, I think that in terms of casting, I think everybody got the screen time they needed. I'll get to the exact positioning of the characters later when we get into the plot breakdown. I'm sure we're all going to have some ideas on what we thought the characters did. But I think casting is going to be actually one of our easier ones. I think that's really all we need to say. Out of 20 points, Delvin, now that you're familiar with this, what do you think of the casting?
19.
19. What about you, Richard?
I was going to say the same thing, 19.
19. I'm actually going to give this a 20.
It was good before, it's good now. There's not a lot that changed or evolved or you could change, So
The only reason I'm giving it a 20 is because they added in several people that I would never have expected. Getting the Ancient One back in, getting the other Asgardians that we got, or not other Asgardians, but getting to see Natalie Portman and Rene Russo and
Valkyrie.
I mean, they pulled in a lot of people I wasn't expecting.
Jarvis.
I mean, that was fantastic. Even if it was short, that was fantastic. Getting to see Howard Stark again for an extended scene, even. That was kind of awesome. But anyway, so I give that one a 20. Now, we're going to take just the briefest of breaks from the action.
Ooh, is it time?
It is time. Believe it or not, it's already been 20 minutes. So we want to take just a moment to plug some stuff that is important to us. There's no ads or anything yet. We haven't sold out to the man. We will. It's not here yet, though.
Oh, it's not selling out.
But, Delvin, do you have anything coming up that you really want to let people know about that are going to be eager to hear on your show?
I have plenty of things coming up, but right now I want to make this about you guys. You guys are doing something really cool. You guys branched out and started your Patreon.
Absolutely, we have.
A Patreon?
What,
tell me more.
Well, for the low price of only $1 per month, you can support the Pudding Guys as we release more and more content. We're attempting to build our catalog of options that we offer. We're going to have, obviously, support for our YouTube channels. This all costs money, and we've been happy to foot it, but it always helps to have a little bit of backing. But we also know your money is really important to you, so we didn't want to create anything that was too impacting. So $1 a month, that's a small amount, and that can really help us out, and it will help us eventually, hopefully, fund even more as we get the special database that we're putting together finished and get that ready. I'm still in the bees, but we'll talk about that later.
And maybe a computer that doesn't buffer or streams things efficiently. I don't know.
Maybe eventually, even down the line, a whole studio that is just set for our audio, where we can have guests come to us, sit down, be comfortable, have awesome audio.
With an adjacent bar.
Yes, that is actually part of the plans.
If you check, you'll notice I subscribe to your Patreon.
I did. We are appreciative. You are patron number 2. Ooh. Absolutely. We appreciate your patronage, sir, and we appreciate you being on our show because we enjoy talking to you.
Yes, sir.
I recommend everybody. It's just $1.
Yeah.
Help support them. I've always been the type to say support independent podcasts, help them grow bigger and stronger. Joe Rogan has thousands, millions and millions of fans.
He's going to be fine.
He's going to be fine. Let's go build somebody else up so they can build somebody else up.
Exactly.
So keep building this podcast community, making it bigger, better, and stronger.
Make this our new source of network television. Get rid of those big giants. No, actually, I take that back. We love you, ABC/CBS, NBC. If you wish to advertise with us,
let's do it.
Feel free. All right, so back to the good thing. Director, we move right into it. Russos. The Russo brothers have done fantastic with any Marvel property they have touched. How do you think their progression has been from the other projects that they've done up until this?
It's been amazing to see because one of my earlier knocks on the Marvel Cinematic Universe was the portrayal of Captain America. Mm-hmm. In terms of like how he was in the Avengers. You didn't really see his full potential. Even in first Avenger, he was cool, but he wasn't where he is now. And when you got Winter Soldier, it literally changed the way how people looked at Captain America. Whereas people kind of was like Iron Man was the one and only guy. It was Iron Man and those other guys. That's how they kind of looked at the Avengers.
Yeah.
Once Winter Soldier came out, it changed everybody's perspective on Captain America, how they looked at him like, oh, Captain America's really a badass.
Yeah.
He's cool. And I've always been a Captain America fan. I always knew the potential of that character. So when Winter Soldier came out and it really changed how everybody else saw Captain America, then it wasn't a fluke, because then they were like, okay, Winter Soldier, everybody loved Winter Soldier. How are we going to top that? Let's give you Civil War, which is my favorite Marvel storyline.
Yeah.
And they did it right. They did it right. They made it matter. They didn't necessarily do the whole let's kill off an Avenger thing. They gave you a story that was maybe more impactful than the comic was, because it was almost like watching a divorce.
Yeah. I
plays
agree.
a big part into Infinity War and Endgame. And one of the things that even touched on in this movie, which is the perfect callback, is the fact that Tony says, and I think the Russos played a big part in this happening. He says in it, like, if that wouldn't happen, if you just would have listened and not been so stubborn, the Avengers would have still been together, and this would not have happened. And I think that was a powerful moment in the movie that only with that excellent storytelling could have happened.
Yeah.
No, you're right. They touched on that even at the beginning, where it's like he was getting mad. It's like, and you weren't there, like in his CGI'd skinny body. You notice that?
Yeah,
he was
I did.
Emaciated and everything. He was mad. He was mad because he wasn't there. He wasn't part of the team. He wasn't there to help. So they did draw upon that previous. So I think the movie, from a direction standpoint, you're stretched. Last movie, you were stretched to your limits. This one pushed you beyond the limits, right? Because there's just so much. There's too much almost going on in this movie. I would almost argue that this is the weakest of their directing capabilities, and that's not a bad thing. So, like, if all your movies are A's and this is a B plus, does that make you bad? No. That just, you had so much of a high standard to live up to in comparison to, that if you didn't get another A or an A plus, that this seems like you did bad. But they didn't do bad. It's just, there was just a certain feeling I had in this movie that was different. And they filmed these movies, like Infinity Wars and Endgame, they filmed all as one big chunk. But they did not, to me, they did not feel the same.
No, and that's to do with the editing process, I'm sure. Now, to kind of touch on what the Russos achieved, I think is more subtle than I think a lot of people consider. I mean, when you look at the history of comic book movies, the vast majority of them have a very specific presentation and feel. They're an origin story, or they are presented as a spectacle of almost modern day mythology, as we see these greater than human beings do things that we wish we could do. So you got the escape and the wish fulfillment, but it's almost always following a very similar structure in the way that it's laid out and the way that it's put together. So even in the early Avengers film, that's what you're getting. You get, I mean, yes, Iron Man was fantastic, but it's essentially an origin story. Captain America, the First Avenger, essentially an origin story. The Hulk, again, same thing. So you're getting kind of the same thing. You get to the Avengers, it's the origin of the team. Now, when you start getting to the other movies that are the sequels, I mean, obviously Hulk didn't get the sequel, but the Thor, the Dark World, still didn't feel like it had a different presentation, in the sense that, I mean, yes, it didn't have the Shakespearean presentation of the original Thor, but it still didn't have that functional differential. Most of the other movies that you got didn't have that functional differential, but when you got Winter Soldier, it's not a superhero film. It has superheroes in it.
Yeah.
It's a spy film.
Yes.
Yes.
And they
Exactly.
keep doing that in their movies.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it has superheroes in it. It is not a superhero film. Now, you can't kind of get away from that to a certain extent in Infinity War and Endgame. I mean, you're gonna have to go back to the spectacle. But even then, this movie is not, to its core, a movie about superheroes. It's a movie about relationships. It's a relationship movie.
It's like a time caper / relationship thing that, like, has superheroes in it. Like you were saying, like, it's a different type of movie where the main characters just happen to be superheroes in it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
I
that's
think the theme of this movie is, and they beat it across your head through the commercials, everything, is how far you be willing to go to protect your family.
yeah, and your family, your friends, the ties that make your existence meaningful. What are those ties? How do you form them? And that they try, and that may be one of the areas that we'll get to that they may fail in going with some of the time travel. But they, with the nebula and all that sort of thing, trying to give you kind of a visual differentiation between a person as they grow and change. But ultimately, I really appreciated that that's what they focus on. It's the relationship between Tony and Steve. It's the relationship between Nebula and Gamora. It's the relationship between Thor and his mom. It's that's the things that
Your mom.
Now we'll have none of that. This is a family-friendly show.
Yeah, so you're right, and it's all about those relationships that have been cultivated. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, so I mean, I think for the controlled chaos that these movies had to have been in filming, I think they did a fantastic job. Even if it didn't live up to the expectations that some of us might have wanted, I think they did as good as anyone I can think of could have done. Do you think Scorsese could have done something like this?
I think there would have been more heads chopped off.
I mean, I can't think. Maybe Cameron, but I wouldn't have been happy with the product. I don't think at the end of it, at least not if I look at some of his more recent stuff.
I think these movies have made the Russo brothers who they're going to be now. Because now they can probably do any movie they want to do.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm quite sure, I don't know if you guys saw the preview for the upcoming movie they have now with Chadwick Boseman.
I haven't seen that yet.
I advise you to look it up. It looks really cool. It basically looks like Captain America Winter Soldier with no heroes. It's just like a spy thriller. It looks really good, really cool.
Well, I love Chadwick. He's got a heck of a stage presence. I like the way he approaches things so far.
Yeah, the Russo brother name means something now.
Oh yeah.
And I want to say this is what they wanted to do with Joss Whedon. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way.
Yeah. I would have, to be truthful, if it were up to me, I would love to have seen, after this whole Avengers thing, the very next movie that the Russo brothers do, rom-com. I think that would have been, I would have laughed every day up until it was released. It would have just filled me with a giddy joy that it would swerve people. It's like, wait, this isn't what we wanted. Sorry, but that's just me.
A superhero rom-com.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. They did that on SNL already, I think. All right, so I don't think there needs to be, again, much gone into more than this on the director. How do you think they did, Delvin? Out of 20.
Going 19 again.
19 again. What about you, good sir?
17.
17. I gave him a good, in the middle of the road, 18. I think they did pretty fantastic. They lost 1 point because Russo inserted himself into the film. That's just terrible. I hate when directors do that. I'm just kidding. I actually didn't mind that at all. He did all right. It's the directors that think they can act that can't act, and then it's just bad. But all right, so costuming and props is our next area. This is a hard one because the vast majority of this film is CGI. So there's not a lot of props that are real props to keep track of. But what did you think about their design on the new Avengers suits, Delvin? What was your take on that?
They look nice. You just didn't see them for long.
No.
It was like maybe like the trailer. The left of the trailer is the one we've seen them.
Yeah, that was kind of surprising.
And even though it took, Hank Pym 60 years, 50 years to perfect them, who knows, managed to create them in a matter of, 2 seconds. and even an Iron Man / War Machine version of those suits as well.
Yeah, that was a little.
That's a different part of the story.
There was some fun consistency with stuff that we saw from previous films, like the staff that had the Mind Stone in it, right? What about the? What did you think about the Thanos armor? I know this is CGI, but I'm going to throw it in here just from a design standpoint. What do you think about that design on that armor?
I thought it looked cool. I thought it looked how it was supposed to look. There was nothing really in this movie that, because this is not fair, because the expectations are already so high for how everything looks in terms of like, okay, Captain America's shield looks like Captain America's shield.
Yep.
Thor hammer looks like Thor hammer. It's not going to change, Everything's supposed to look the way it looks. As long as it looks the way it's supposed to look, it should be fine.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what this movie suffers from. Everything looks great. It's nothing that looks out of place, really, or anything like that.
I liked the big sword thingy.
That was pretty cool. Yeah, I've never seen him wield that in the comics, so that seems to be a movie specific.
Completely made up from that standpoint. Yeah.
But a good addition. I like that weapon.
I think it fit the character because that was younger Thanos.
Yeah.
So, well, this is not a part of it, what we're talking about right now, but I like the fact that there was a difference between the younger Thanos and the Thanos that the Avengers actually fought in Infinity War.
Yeah. Yeah. Years and years of conquest to change the personality. That was pretty slick.
But what about portly Thor? Because of course that was like the hair, the bodysuit. That's all prop.
Gotta love that.
That's a good point. At times it looked good.
Yes.
Then there was times where it looked too much like a prop.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was maybe not as realistic as it should have looked in comparison to everything else, but I think that may not be the prop's fault. Chris Hemsworth is like a demigod in real life in how he looks. So if you cover that up, I'm guessing that's just the supermodel underneath shining through, and it just looks wrong. It's like, I know he's much better looking than that.
Yeah, so that's...
They should have got the guys who did the Nutty Professor.
Ooh. Well, yeah, actually, that was pretty good. I was thinking back to the film itself not being that great, but the prosthetics were pretty decent. Or
the prosthetics were pretty good on Eddie Murphy.
Yeah. Or Coming to America, all the prosthetics in that were pretty fantastic.
Oh, yeah, they were great, yeah.
And Korg had a nice pineapple T-shirt on.
I kept going back to CGI again. All right, so there's really not much to talk about in this because, I mean, they're really... Everything looked the way it should that was real. It's just so little of this movie was actual real stuff.
Yeah.
And the stuff that was real was like, oh, he's wearing an army suit. Oh, that's a briefcase. Nothing that was key in my mind. Did you notice anything that was just stood out that was an actual prop or an actual piece of clothing that you just went, huh, that was an odd choice, or that didn't quite work? Not really.
I guess what Richard brought up earlier about Thor, that's probably the main thing I saw. I was like, oh yeah, that kind of had its moment where it looked off. And moments where it looked good. So yeah, that's probably the biggest thing I can think of off the top of my head.
Did you see anything else that was really big?
Not really. I'm trying to think. The gauntlet that they kind of lugged around at the end.
I think it looked all right.
It was fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, because so much of it was CGI. The Ronin sword was fun.
The Ronin sword was awesome.
I love that. The suit. Costume was great.
I was so happy that they brought that aspect of his character into the movie because I liked that little swerve in the comics. I mean, Hawkeye has changed so much over the years and done so many different things that was kind of nice. A nice little callback.
Like that this movie gave him a bigger role.
Yes, he needed it.
If anybody deserved it, he deserved it.
Yeah.
Or should we say a role?
He was actually doing something this time. Well, I will say
a large chunk. He had a lot of screen time.
And then the one other thing I'll mention, just the other thing that stuck out, it didn't stick out the first time I watched it, but the second time, the suit that Captain Marvel was wearing at the funeral. There's nothing wrong with it. I just really liked it. I like the design. I looked at it again. It's like, that's a really smart looking suit. That is
The pantsuit?
Yeah, it was like a pantsuit, but it was all slick and nice lines, just mostly black with some white highlights in there. That looked that's like, I could see buying that for my wife. And then her not wearing it because I don't think our tastes don't overmesh, which is why I just go with her as she chooses what she wants. That goes both ways, though. Mm-hmm. All right, well, out of 10 then, Delvin, how do you think we did costuming and props wise?
8.
8. You, sir?
I'll go with the 9 because traditionally all the stuff is good. It's just there wasn't anything that was
Amazing.
Grown and then the fat suit.
The fat suit, yeah. That's why I also went 9. The fat suit took away a point at times, but the rest of it I was fine with.
Yeah.
Location. Now this is a weird one. We're going to spend very little time on location because again, the entire thing's in CGI for the most part. It's just not much point in talking about location. I don't think most of them were from the other films or that we've already seen. There's almost nothing that was brand new, with the exception of Tony's hunting lodge.
Yes, the lake.
Yeah,
and the lodge. Yeah.
Yeah, and a little bit of shots of the city. Now, I guess that is one way that I'm going to start this off. What did you think about their presentation of the post-snap world?
I would like to see more of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the impression I got. They gave a couple snapshots, and it was just gone.
Yeah, it's all New Yorkish rundown stuff, like rundown City Field. For some reason, everybody had houseboats around the Statue of Liberty. I don't understand why, but
those might not have been houseboats. Maybe they were shipping cargo ships or something.
Could be.
Or if it's Fallout 4, it's both.
That's true. But I bet there's a lot of toolboxes in there with scissors and screwdrivers.
Cigarettes. Just lone cigarettes.
Cartons of cigarettes.
Yeah.
Maybe some ammo, too,
What about the garage? The garage was nice. The little bit where they Doctor
Who?
Not Doctor Who. I'm spacing his name. The comedian they brought in to be the guard.
Yes.
Dr. Ken?
What's his name?
No. I feel terrible. This guy's super funny, and I'm just spacing on his name.
So, virtually everybody that was in Community, which the Russo brothers directed quite a few of, have been in some Marvel MCU movie of some sort.
Yes.
Kim Jong.
Yeah.
That's who it was. He was in this one as well as she was at the base in the elevator.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's where I recognized her from.
Is her last name Brown? I can't remember what it is. But she was in Community. That's where you saw her.
Yeah, and Winter Soldier had another of the members of Community as one of the SHIELD agents. I remember.
Yeah.
Also, yeah.
Who else? I can't remember.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. All Community.
That's neither here nor there.
Yeah. Anyway, so this is what happens when you watch two older gentlemen talking to a third gentleman. We're just going to forget half the stuff, and we're not going to apologize. That's our years catching up to us.
Sometimes you just got to ramble a little bit.
So we're gonna unless you've got something specific. Do you have something specific locationally that jumped out at you, Delvin?
Nothing was pretty. Well, the final battle was cool.
Yeah.
The location of the final battle, that was pretty awesome. To just see that, almost like a splash page of a comic book.
Yeah, the collapsed Avengers headquarters that left a perfect corridor for Hawkeye to escape. But he's got to get out. Okay. What about you? Any other locationally stuff?
Nah.
We always kind of flash over this anyway because location is kind of one of the less important things, and that's why it's only worth 10 points. So how many points do you think, Delvin?
9.
9 points.
I'll give her a 9er.
9 points. You know, I originally put down 10, but now I think about it, I think I will also put it down for 9.
I just don't get perfect scores on anybody's surveys.
Don't quote me to me.
That was just a generic.
I see. This is the guy. This is the guy I have to put up with. All right. Well, let's go into where things actually get a little meat and potatoes, to the cinematography, because that includes all of the CGI that works throughout the movie, the camera angles, the placement, all of the decisions they make, where we see what we see. So, what jumped out at you? I mean, this isn't a movie with a lot of standard 2 shots in it. Anything that kind of caught your eye that you think you should start with?
I just keep thinking about the final battle.
Yeah.
How well that was shot and how nice it looked. How it looked almost like a comic book.
Yeah.
Coming to life, and it was so cool how they did it, how they made it look, and yeah, it was just a big CGI battle, but when you got those big moments in it, it just looked so cool and looked so well done.
Yeah, it was pretty massively cool.
Yep, and to have everybody be there in some form or fashion, and when you have that battlefield and you have the people spread out, all their little individual figures are CGI, right? They're not zooming out on everybody then filling in. They're just putting a whole field of people as CGI. So that really, because I mean, there's like a half hour, 40 minutes of that stuff. The whole fight sequence at the end is just pretty fun. All the interactions with Captain America and Mjolnir, like it's all CGI, right? So like that whole battle sequence was really fun. The emaciated Tony Stark. That worked out well. Professor Hulk was fine, not amazing, but fine.
I had mixed feelings on the Professor Hulk a little bit.
The presentation or the actual character?
The effect. The character, they couldn't make Professor Hulk like the Professor Hulk from the comics. It just wasn't going to be able to happen, right? On the plus side, the amount of facial expression and the amount of ability to emote that they gave the Professor Hulk was fantastic. However, it felt awkward, I guess. It just didn't seem to mesh real well at times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my problem with Professor Hulk was he just looked like Mark Ruffalo, just bigger. He didn't really look like the Hulk.
No.
And Mark Ruffalo, he looked like Mark Ruffalo, just bigger.
Yeah. Although I did really appreciate the little thing where he's supposed to break stuff and he just kind of flicks a car. And that was kind of fun. And I thought that worked out pretty well. And when they went back to the original Hulk, they did show that differentiation pretty well. Especially because, they had the original footage, but then they also had the new footage they created of him going down the stairwell, which was fantastic.
That's pretty funny.
That was pretty good. But there were other things that were minor issues that I had, just small bits and pieces, because I felt that they went back and forth really well between the epic kind of large scale pull back shots to the personal ones. But it's some of the finer details I felt that they kind of missed on occasion, like the masks for the Avengers suits. They looked weird. It felt kind of like, I don't know, somebody interned and they were the ones that made the. So yeah, there's their faces, and I kind of sort of put it over the faces, but I don't want to get it too close because then it just looked really fake to me. That may have just been my impression.
I think they've always had issues with that. And were we talking about this before with like the in Infinity Wars, like when Tony Stark is fighting Thanos at the end, and like half of his mask is gone, and it looks really, really bad. Were we talking about that together, or was it on the podcast?
No, I think we were talking about that when we were trying to waste time at a place that will not be named.
Yeah, so like that, there were definitely some weak spots. In Infinity Wars, like when you had a lot of the talking pieces from Thanos, they were okay, but like the mouth movements were just real puppety, I thought. And obviously that translates over into this one too, where some of those speaking things, we're not Jar Jar Binks here, right?
No.
It's not that bad, but it's like it just didn't seem complete, or it didn't seem polished.
It felt
nitpicking
lacking. Yeah,
on that.
it's definitely,
But
well, that's what we're here for. We're here to nitpick.
Yep.
What do you think, Delvin? Did you have anything that kind of irritated you?
Not really, but maybe it's because it's what I already expected.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? You get to seeing this so long, you're like, okay, this is how this character moves. Yeah, okay, this is how it's gonna look. And I think you kind of just let that stuff kind of go when you get so used to seeing it for so long. Like, okay, it's just how it is.
Yeah. And truthfully, that's most of where my nitpicking has to be, is in that CGI, because when it comes to the actual shots themselves, with one exception that I'll get to here in a second, I didn't have any issues with the movie. And I want to preface this exception that I'm going to make with, I feel I shouldn't have to preface it, but I'm going to anyway.
forced.
It's
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah. I agree completely that a lot of the female characters have not been handled very well over the years in a lot of the Marvel movies. And there are some things that we'll get to this, I think, that I definitely agree that it's not handled maybe in the best possible way. However, there is one thing that greatly annoyed me when I saw it, to the point where I laughed in the theater and I had to look around just to make sure I didn't annoy anybody. But the girl power, here's all the women posing scene, I don't think was particularly good. It was
Forced.
It did not make a whole lot of sense to me anyway.
Although I did like the rescue, if that's what they're calling her, that character. That was cool. I like that.
I can agree that it was forced, but it worked. Because I went to the movies with my wife and my daughter, and my son, of course, and they cheered probably the loudest when that scene happened. And all the women in the theater cheered the loudest when that scene happened.
Well, as long as it worked for somebody, I always have that thing in the back of my head. I go, were all of the women waiting for this one moment to all line up? It's like, what? And my wife was trying to explain why she liked that particular scene so much better. And she says, well, it happens for the men character all the time. There's all sorts of posing. It's like,
Which is true.
That's true. It is, but it isn't. My counterpoint was, well, when it happens for the men, they're not posing because they're men. They're just posing. So I mean, I can see both sides. I had to think about it and chew on it more. And I definitely see both sides of it better than I did when I initially thought of it. But it just seemed, I would have preferred if, instead of having like the entire group, like during the course of the battle, it organically unfolded. Where like each individual female character had that moment. And to a certain extent they did. Some of them did, at least. I mean, you got that for Scarlet Witch, and you got it for Captain Marvel for sure. But, just, and sort of for Valkyrie for a moment, but she was kind of more just flying by. But I would rather have had that just one badass moment where they did something that's kind of signature to that character, front and center, and you can even put them in a row. Have Peter running through, or whoever running through, and he has to pass, and then it's through the battle, and he just happens by, and you get a moment. There's the Wasp, and she takes out like 3 people. She's dead center. Then you go, oh, there is Valkyrie. She chops somebody in half, something like that, and it's more organic rather than.
And there's Mantis, and
she. kick somebody.
I was kind of wondering what, I was just wondering what she was doing.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that because what you're saying actually happened in Infinity War
Yeah.
in a lot more natural way.
Yeah.
The big scene where they're all fighting and all of a sudden they just happen to get together to fight against that. I can't remember her name.
Proxima Midnight.
Midnight.
That I loved. That was fantastic.
Yeah.
That
was well done.
There are a lot of things that I feel like in some of the recent movies, not just Marvel movies, but recent movies that are just forced based on what current trends are or current things are. So, like, one of the things which, I know you're not a huge Star Wars person. Delvin, are you a Star Wars person?
Big Star Wars guy.
So, like, the most recent one, the Last Jedi, like, there was just those awkward, forced humor or awkward, forced scenes.
Yeah.
Like when Luke stands there and he gets blasted, and then when he's done getting blasted, he's like, come on, man.
I have a whole theory about that.
Yeah. So.
I'm even getting you started on that.
Yeah. There, like, it's just like things like that I've seen pop up in movies. It's just like you're taking these things. Well, Justice League was a real big example of that.
Yeah, that was particularly bad.
Some like the booyah at the end. Yeah. So that was pretty real bad. I just felt like there were still some elements of that in this movie too that were just, you had this movie, and when they went back and they rethought, because the thing was shot 2 years ago. They were like, oh my gosh, we need to throw these little cues in here and here. So they were forced. They weren't part of the normal progression. They just seemed out of place. And not that they were bad, they were just out of place. Or forced. That's what I've noticed a lot of.
Yeah.
Although the one in Star Wars was bad. Really bad.
But you know, what Marvel usually does when they have those scenes, like especially those pop culture references, they give it to Peter Parker.
Yeah.
Because it works when he does it.
Yeah. That's pretty fair. It
doesn't work when somebody else does it.
No.
Peter Parker does it because he's a kid. And because usually when he says it, people go like, oh God, Peter, stop. it makes it a lot more acceptable.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's true. But, truthfully, if that's really my only, and it really is my only contentions with this film, that's for the most part pretty minor when it comes to cinematography.
Yeah. And that wasn't even, was that really a cinematography? It kind of was a cinematography.
The pose was a cinematography.
Yeah.
And the CGI was.
The wind in the air.
Where they freeze and they're all in a line because roll call.
The panning over.
Yeah.
The panning over and then the one.
That was pretty bad too. I completely forgot about that. There's so much in this movie. But that could have been worse. But I don't know. For me, that's a 19 to 20. I think that's pretty solid for me. What about you, Delvin?
I agree. 19 out of 20.
I'll do 18.
18. All right. Now we get into the meat, the core. The appetizers are done. We're into the main course, the plot and the writing, where a movie lives or dies generally, unless it's a Fast or Furious film, in which case, who needs a plot? You have cars.
Hobbs and Shaw coming 2019.
I wanted to kick myself in the theater because I've not had any interest in the Fast or Furious, and every single little bit that I saw of them just made me more sure that my choice was correct. However,
pick another door.
I kind of want to see Hobbs and Shaw just because I really like The Rock and I really like Jason Statham.
Well, the movie will be awful, but they're cool.
Yeah, I might end up going to see it. I will see when the time comes. But for this plot and writing, Delvin, you start us off. What's something that just is top of mind that strikes out at you with the movie that we have to touch?
The final act. The final act, I think, is masterfully done.
It did flow.
The final act, I think, gives you the best of what you think of Marvel. When you think of all those moments that just stand out, and all those cool character moments that made you fall in love with these characters and Marvel for that matter. I think that's where it really stands out.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. You were talking earlier, we were talking earlier about how it felt a little slower in the beginning. It seemed to steamroll. So as it picked up momentum, it just going faster and faster and faster. I think that's one of the reasons I felt that the first time I watched it, the 3 hours just went by so fast, because while it started a little slow, once it got going, it never stopped. And it's just, no, wait, hold on. Like you're talking about the scenes at the end with the battle sequences. It was like a comic book, and I wished it was more like a comic book so I could stop the screen and see everything. But I kept having to pick and choose what I wanted to see.
You can focus on the whole. You can look at the picture of the whole and miss things, or focus on one thing and not miss that thing, but miss everything
Which,
else.
don't get me wrong, that's good. That gives it rewatchability, so I can look at something else next time. But I don't know. I have to agree. The flow. I actually like the flow for the whole film, even the slower parts in the beginning. What about with let's focus on some character specific stuff, because that's a lot of times where something lives and dies. I think one of the things that they tried to make more of a focus in this film, and you have to tell me whether you think they succeeded or failed, is Black Widow.
Yes.
Her character development, was it sufficient? Was it good? What do you think, Delvin?
I thought it was good to a point, and I think my gripe is I feel like they dropped the ball at the end.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is the fact that, okay, Black Widow is one of the founding Avengers. She basically was one of the first characters to meet up with Tony and introduce him to this world. So when she dies, she should have got kind of a bigger send-off.
That was my thought exactly.
Yeah, she
Because
got nothing out of this movie.
Funeral. They give Tony this big funeral, which is cool, which makes sense.
Yep.
But then they just like, okay, yeah, Black Widow's dead too. And Hulk gets mad for a second, and they're like, yeah, okay, we're done with that now.
So the part of that is there was no weight, there was no gravity. When you in Infinity War, when they went there and he chucked Gamora off, like, you felt that gravity of the situation, right?
Yeah.
But in this one, when they're like, okay, Team 1, you go here, and Team 2, you go here, and, like, we'll get the Soul Stone, like, my immediate thought was, well, who's going to die? Because, like, we knew that. Now, none of those characters knew that situation, but there was no gravity in the situation when they went to the Soul Stone, and they're just both like, oh, well, you go. No, I'll get it. I'll go. Like, there was no weight to that situation at all. Like, you knew when they were going there that one of them wasn't coming back. You knew it. And when it was there and it was done, it was just like, okay, let's move on. Like, like I said, there was no weight to it. There was nothing afterwards. It was like, oh man, like, that just happened. Like, it was just like, okay, let's keep moving.
I don't think it's because we knew it was coming. I think it's something completely different. It's not something that's entirely this film's fault, but this film could not do enough to rectify it. And it's that those two characters were two of the least developed characters. I mean, you had Hawkeye was in Thor for all of 2 seconds. He was in the Avengers, but he was technically a bad guy, or at least under bad guy control for a good chunk of that. He was in Age of Ultron, but other than the fact that, hey, we got a place to save
Family Man,
it really wasn't there. In Civil War, a little bit more, but not much. I mean, you never got much of a development of the Hawkeye character, and Scarlet Witch suffered the same problem. I mean, a lot of people complained about that very little bit of development from her history with the assassins that trained her.
Wait, you said Scarlet Witch. You're talking about Black Widow?
Sorry, Black Widow. Like I said, old guy. It happens. But Black Widow, her dark secret being, she's been made infertile.
She's in the League of Assassins.
Yeah, and I definitely see two sides to it. So it's hard to have that same kind of emotional impact because they haven't given us enough to get that same investment.
Well, where did we have a lot of investment in Gamora?
Yes. At least I did. I had more investment in Gamora than I did Black Widow.
I think a little bit more because Gamora was a little different because she was in love with Peter, and we were invested in Peter Quill. So when you see that moment where if this is going back to Infinity War, you see that moment where he's basically getting ready to kill her. That was a powerful scene.
Yeah.
Because you know that like they finally bonded. He finally got what he wanted with her, and he was basically having to give that up. And I think that was the last movie he's seen her alive.
I could definitely see that aspect to it. I mean, but for me with Gamora, you see character development that you don't see with Black Widow. I mean, essentially, what character development has she gotten? She got kind of a relationship, but not a relationship with the Hulk. It didn't really go anywhere. It didn't really do anything. You got a little glimpse into her background, but how really did her character change over time?
I think she did get some, but they took it all back.
Yeah.
And with her soldier, that's the most developed she was as a character.
Yeah.
And then with Age of Ultron, they just took it all back.
Yeah. But with Gamora, you actually get to see her change or slowly reveal how she thinks over the course of the Guardians of the Galaxy films and see her open up and become a more full person because she realizes that she not only wants but needs these connections, not just with Peter Quill. Peter Quill is actually secondary. It's that connection with Nebula, that connection with Thanos that she develops. That's where I got that investment from her character. So that's why it had an impact when she died to me. At least that.
Even in Endgame, when she sees the second Gamora from the future, and she asks her, "How are we in the future?"
Yeah.
Yeah, we were. And when she tells me we're friends, okay, she's cool now. I can tell her how I really feel about Thanos.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good callback.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think that death was a cop out, an easy way. Now the other, so it just had the whole movie itself had those similar types of impacts or lack of impacts. So if you remember in Infinity War, so like they're Scarlet Witch and Vision, they're fighting and they're about to lose, and then out of the shadows steps Captain America. You know, like the crowd when we watched it was like, yeah, and you kind of got that thing like, oh, like they're in trouble now. Like you got that excitement built up when they're battling in Wakanda and appears out of the rainbow is Thor, and you're just like, oh, cool, man, and he just like starts destroying everything. Like you got that, just like that. It felt like you felt it with inside. If you like the characters and you liked it, it's like it had that impact. In this movie, I just didn't get any of that. Right? Like I didn't get the now when they had the stuff with the hammer with Captain America and the hammer at the end, like. That's real cool, but that wasn't a like to me it didn't have that same oh my gosh here it is now type of thing. Like it had the this is awesome impact, but it didn't have the feel it in your chest impact. You know what? Like there's a difference.
A couple of scenes where you can feel it in your chest, especially the scene I think that comes to mind with me is the scene where you see Captain America with the shield broken. Thanos was standing there kind of like gloating with his whole Chitauri army. Then all of a sudden you hear in Captain America's headset, Cap
Sam
to your
Wilson.
left.
Yeah.
And then just everybody come out. I think that was that moment.
Yeah. I agree with Delvin on that one. That was that moment for me too, because I was just waiting ever since they did the second snap. It's like, okay, where is everybody? Where is everybody? And they did good by making us wait for it until absolutely it's now one guy with a broken shield against an entire army. That was perfect. And because you couldn't get, because of the type of movie it was and the situation they were in, there's no way to get that feeling unless you did something like that. And I thought that really definitely did that. I mean, yeah, they hammed it up a little bit with 3,000 portals, and it took them a little while to bring everybody in. But
hey, everybody's alive.
Yeah. I was really glad to see Wong, for sure, for multiple reasons. I like what they did with that character. He has always been one of my favorite underrated characters in the comics that I always really liked. When he's developed well, he's so good in the comics. And I like that actor, not just because he has the same name, but I think he brings out the character pretty well, and that was good to see. I did have some other issues. There were some consistency issues, internal logic of the film issues. Well, let's address the redheaded stepchild. That is the problem with most movies like this. That I think Endgame and the Russos in Endgame tried to present in a good way, and then just kind of screw up because it's hard not to screw it up. Time travel. So, how do you think they did with the time travel?
I like the way they did it. I like the way they did it. I think it makes sense, even though the problem with the way they explained it didn't make sense. But if you actually, I like the thing about it that bothered me about it is you had to go look up what they were talking about. But the theory is essentially this: you can't change your own timeline. Like your timeline, your history is your history. But you can go back in time and make alternate histories if you don't do the right things correctly.
Yeah.
That's why Captain America had to go back and put everything right back in place.
Sure. So that's where I have my first problem. So he's got to go back and put everything back in place. So he's given a briefcase. He's got all the stones. So let's go to Vormir. Here's the Soul Stone. Easy enough. Take it back. Clouds. Sure. Okay. Next, we got the little ball that has the other one. Put the thing in the ball. Put the ball on the pedestal. Everything's good. One of them was a Tesseract. One of them was Mist. Cap is a human and has no way to turn them into their original forms. They never cover how they're going to go back to their original form.
That's a big problem.
Yeah.
And why is the timeline that he appears in as the old man not a different timeline?
Because he went back and stayed. Now, somebody talked to me about this one. It's like, well, you'd have to just like stay in the house and never interact with anybody to not create it. It's like, well, if you're doing a branch for any change, he created a branch no matter what. But who said there? Go ahead.
What I think he did was, I think that he stayed in that alternate timeline and just can't use the pin particles to come back just to give him the shield.
Mm-hmm.
That's my reading of it.
That's not too bad. Yeah. So instead of coming back on the main thing, he just kind of appeared somewhere else and then went over and sat on the bench and waited for a second.
Yeah.
I can get behind that part of it. I don't have too much problem, but I also had another problem with how they presented it. So what did the Ancient One explain to Bruce Banner about what the Infinity Stones did? What was their purpose? Well, they create time-space.
Yes.
That's what she said specifically. What did Thanos do at the beginning of the movie? Destroyed all of the stones.
Yeah.
So somebody is lying or stupid. Which is it?
Or it was written for convenience.
Yeah.
Sorry, little things like that annoy the crap out of me, and just make. Okay. Let's say that the stones were never destroyed, and they handle it like a comic book way. He thought he destroyed them, but they actually went to different places. And when Cap brings the gems back, they create their own forms, and we do the super convenient thing. They just do it themselves. Throughout the course of the movie, they have to go back a second time for the Tesseract.
Yes.
They fail the first time. They have to go back a second time. So he has to go back to New York to bring the one stones back, but then he has to also take the other stone back. The actions that they took still happen.
Well, that's what everybody's theorizing, whether Loki is seriously going to come.
I'm sorry, we got you to break up there a little bit.
I said that's where everybody's theorizing. That's where the Loki TV series is going to come from.
That's what I'm hoping, in the sense. But here's the problem with that. If Loki has the Tesseract, then that affects the future timeline, and that creates a branch.
Well, if Loki has the Tesseract, he already created the ultimate timeline.
Yeah.
It won't affect their timeline.
Yeah.
But his timeline he's in is screwed.
So it's really complicated and muddled. And I understood they had to do time travel in order to fix this particular problem in this movie. But I really wish they could have found some other way to do it.
They could have did it in a simpler and a shorter way.
Yeah. Just stop him from getting the stones in the first place, or maybe, and this is I'm just spitballing. Treat the Infinity Gauntlet like it is in the comics, so that anybody can touch it and they don't die. That was one of the things that annoyed me. Also, it's like, why would you change it? Maybe it's to add some sort of repercussions for the use of the gems, but inevitably you should be able to just kind of use the glove to fix whatever, and then you don't have to time travel.
Yeah, I think, like I said, there was a lot of good things about the plot that I liked a lot. I liked the fact that one of the things I liked a lot about it was the fact that they didn't take back any of the deaths that happened.
No.
Like Gamora, dead. No coming back.
Yep.
Loki, dead. Anybody who died in Infinity War that wasn't snapped away is, for now, dead. And not coming back anytime soon.
I have a theory about the Gamora thing, too, because a lot of people pointed out, it's like, okay, so they brought Gamora back, but they didn't bring Black Widow back, a version of Black Widow back. And they still possibly could if they wanted to be fun and do that. But I have a theory that I'm hoping is accurate, that when Tony did the snap at the end of the film, my boys were like, well, he just killed everybody. So now he didn't kill everybody. He sent them back to their time. That was his fix, because not just the dudes, but the ships disappeared. I don't remember in the first snap any structures disappearing. So if he did it as a time travel thing to fix that particular aspect of reality, which it would, and especially if he erased the memories, he should have done the same thing with Gamora. So that could leave a really fun storyline for Peter Quill searching for Gamora. He's never going to find her.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
She's gone.
That could be, I think that has a lot of potential to it, and I think they're going to cave to pressure and bring her back because Zoe Saldana is fantastic and the Gamora character is fun, and they'll find a way to worm around it that won't quite actually work in any logical sense. But at least you'll have the character.
But that's what you can do in comic books, though.
Yeah.
This is what bothered me about all the announcements they made before this movie came out. Because they announced, we're going to have a Vision and Scarlet Witch TV show. We're going to have a Falcon and Winter Soldier TV show. Those announcements should have probably happened after this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, they do it like it's like, we're going to have a couple of really cool shows that are going to have direct ties to the movies. We're not going to